Marjorie Taylor Greene is facing a Democratic firing squad for saying some really weird things. Who is Marjorie Taylor Greene? A Texas representative from some rural district, you might be asking. That's a good question. But apparently, she's like all Republicans and conservatives. So we probably should know a little bit since obviously we're all like her. But is it a good idea to put her in the firing squad for Democrats? Probably not. We'll talk about it. And QAnon. Since Marjorie Taylor Greene believes in QAnon theory, what is it? We should probably find out because all conservatives and Republicans are being thrown into this QAnon bucket. And we had the Super Bowl this weekend, and it really sucked. This is Gene, and you're listening to Dumbasses Talking Politics. Hey, this is Gene. Welcome back to Dumbasses Talking Politics. So the Super Bowl was yesterday, and you can tell why the NFL is down like 40% in viewership. It was a really blah game. Now, I actually did notice it was still a lot of social justice messaging, though I do have to hand it to the NFL. The social justice messaging was not done during the game, and that's really what I expected. I expected to see a lot of social justice messaging during the game, outside of a couple of mentions of, the first female referee, blah, blah, blah. There really wasn't a heck of a lot during the game. Before the game, after the game, yes, there was a ton. Before the game, you had the singing of the national anthem and the singing of America the Beautiful. Everyone stood. That was great. You had that weirdo making that, I don't know, slam poem or whatever she was doing, making another poem about how terrible white people are and how terrible the United States is, things like that. That didn't go off real well. The halftime show really wasn't political. It just was bad. The commercials were really... You can tell that was we are going through a racial thing because every commercial had black people in it. They weren't necessarily the most political, but there was political. There were really, honestly, no funny commercials. It was just a really bland Super Bowl, and the game where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won. I think it was 31-9 or something. I left early, so I just wasn't interested in watching it. It just wasn't a very good game. I can't wait to see the ratings because I think the ratings for this Super Bowl are actually going to be quite low. I don't think the ratings are going to be great. I'm thrilled to see Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl, and that's because I hate the New England Patriots. I think that Bill Belichick is the most overrated coach in probably history. And I always thought that the reason he won was because Tom Brady was just a great quarterback. And then Tom Brady leaves. The New England Patriots can't make the playoffs, and Tom Brady wins another Super Bowl. So, it was a game. It was there. It wasn't a great game. I won't replay it. It wasn't like it was close. It was never close. I mean, the Bucks were up 14-3 in the first half, so it was just not a very good game. But anyway, let's get to what we're going to talk about. Who we're going to talk about is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, she is a representative that was elected by some rural district in Texas. So she's just got elected by a couple of thousand votes. It wasn't like, New York had gotten her. But here's the thing. A few years ago, she actually said some really odd things with conspiracy theories. And all this stuff was basically QAnon crap. And we're going to talk about QAnon today because I think we need to understand this with the way the media is going on this. A couple of things that she said. She said that 9/11 was not a terrorist attack, but it was a U.S. conspiracy. Missiles were hitting the Twin Towers. A missile hit the Pentagon. Fun stuff like that. She said that the forest fires in California were caused by a Jewish space laser. That's kind of cool. I mean, that's kind of cool. If the Jews had a space laser, that would be great. A lot of it called it anti-Semitic, but I'm thinking to myself, it's not anti-Semitic if they have that thing. That is just awesome. And all sorts of weird theories like that. I'm sure she didn't believe we landed on the moon, and JFK was killed by a cabal of, and that's going to be the key word today, is going to be cabal, because that seems to be what the big word in the media is. A cabal of LBJ and mob and CIA minions and things like that. At first, the representatives wanted her to resign her seat, but these posts were made well before she was elected to office. So basically, the people knew what she was into. And it's very difficult to actually remove her from a seat when she actually got elected to that seat, even though she made these statements. So getting rid of her was kind of out. You didn't want to, say that the vote is irrelevant because she said crazy things. Republicans voted on whether she should or should not be removed from her 2 committee seats. Now, these are not huge committee seats, labor and education or something like that. They weren't huge committee seats. They held the vote, and she was allowed to keep her committee spots. I understand why they wanted to take her committee spots away, and I also understand why they didn't. She was elected, and she can't do anything just sitting on the sidelines. So by taking away her committee seats, they're actually just basically neutering her. She's not going to be able to do a lot. But I also, it's not fair to her constituents. But I also understand why they wanted to suspend her committee assignments, because she said some really crazy ass things. And that is enough reason to suspend her. The kicker is the Republicans, who are actually very good about calling out their own when they say or do stupid stuff, they could have found a middle ground. They didn't have to get rid of her, expel her from her committee seats. They didn't have to give her the committee. They could have suspended her from her committee seats, give her 6 months, and then swap it out. But they didn't do that for some reason. I mean, she said enough crazy stuff that you got to say, oh, well, maybe she shouldn't be there. The Republicans, of course, got hammered by the Democrats and the press, which are the same thing. Okay. I mean, it makes sense. The problem is, the Democrats hammering anyone about not getting suspended by the Republicans after she says something seems a little thick to me, considering the Democrats have let Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Eric Swalwell. They let all them off. But apparently Republicans don't have to meet the same needs. But Democrats decided they weren't going to sit still for this. They thought she was this dangerous because she believes in Jewish space lasers that they decided to have a vote and actually forcibly expel Greene from these committees. They decide this is unheard of. It's never been done before. The minority party has a history of choosing their own members of the House for the committees, and the only way they can get expelled is by their own party. It's not up to the majority party to expel anyone. It is part of the minority rights thing that the Founding Fathers had in mind when they wrote that Constitution. The majority party should have no say to who the minority party puts into a committee. Kevin McCarthy made this clear that this was unprecedented. And, like ending the judicial filibuster, which Harry Reid did when the Democrats wanted to get rid of the judicial filibuster, he said Democrats were going to regret this in the future. Listen.
When it comes time to vote, I expect Democrats will codify this partisan power grab. I would advise them to think twice and pull this resolution from the floor while they still can. I've heard Democrats quote Senator Minority Leader to defend this resolution. I would remind them what Leader McConnell said when Democrats voted to nuke the judicial filibuster. You'll regret this, and you may regret this a lot sooner than you think. If that's the new standard, if people are held to what they are said prior to even being in this House, if majority party gets to decide who sits on what other committees, I hope you keep that standard, because we have a long list you can work within your own.
This is absolutely true. And what you're going to see happen, and this is already passed, Greene is off her committees because the Democrats voted her off her committees. What's going to happen when the Republicans take the House in 2022? And that's going to happen. I have very little doubt. I'm looking at what Biden's doing now. It's disastrous. Other things that McCarthy brought up in this speech, and if you should go to my website at www.dumbasses.talkingpolitics.com and actually look at the entire speech. It's about 12 minutes. He points out that this is a waste of time. That this Congress has done very little. And it did very little. The 170, I think this is the 177th Congress. Don't quote me on that. But the 176th Congress did nothing. And so far, the 177th Congress has done nothing. And he says this is just a waste of the time for politics. And he's absolutely 100% correct. What he's also correct about is that he points out the hypocrisy of the Democrats. They have plenty of opportunity to kick out bad apples from their own committees, including Eric Swalwell, who was boofing a Chinese spy, Ilhan Omar, who has said a ton of made a ton of anti-Semitic comments that are actually still on Twitter. And also, there's a ton of problems with her finances, her campaign finances. She married her brother. She's got a lot of problems. She's still on her committees. And finally, Maxine Waters, the biggest hypocrite probably in the Democratic Party, and definitely one of the dumber people, as I told you earlier, who sat back and actually did incite violence against Trump supporters, Republicans, and conservatives. She's a chairwoman of a committee. This is all true. But here's the thing. The strongest defense for Greene was Greene herself. She actually did make a very nice speech. She sat in front of Congress. She apologized for the unwise things she believed in way back. She admitted she believed in them way back when. She made it clear she didn't believe in these things now. It was only during very insecure times of her life, and she supported Donald Trump, and she admits that with all the garbage that was going on, she kind of fell into this stuff because she supported Donald Trump, and she thought he was getting kind of railroaded. She also admitted that she didn't believe in everything she saw. She said she could see when this was wrong, when things were wrong, but some things did sound good. Let's listen to her apology speech, or part of her apology speech.
I also want to tell you 9/11 absolutely happened. I remember that day crying all day long watching it on the news. And it's a tragedy for anyone to say it didn't happen. And so that I definitely want to tell you, I do not believe that it's fake. I also want to tell you that we've got to do better. You see, big media companies can take teeny tiny pieces of words that I've said, that you have said, any of us, and can portray us into someone that we're not. And that is wrong. Cancel culture is a real thing. It is very real. And when big tech companies like Twitter You can scroll through and see where someone may have retweeted porn. This is a problem. This is a terrible, terrible thing. But yet, when I say that I absolutely believe with all my heart that God's creation is He created them male and female, and that should not be denied, when I am censored for saying those type of things, that is wrong. You see, here's the real situation. I decided to run for Congress because I wanted to help our country. I want Americans to have...
Listen, I know people who believe in this stuff. Seriously. Someone close to me believes in a lot of this stuff. It's crazy stuff. But, said the right way, it takes advantage of those who are already susceptible to crazy stuff. I don't believe any of it. We're going to talk about the belief system of QAnon and my opinion about conspiracy theories in a few minutes. But we're living in such a bizarre time, such a crazy time. Some of these conspiracy theories can make sense to someone who's really insecure about what's happening in the world today. And this gal is basically saying that. Listen, I was in a bad place. And again, her apology was about 12 minutes long. And I've got a shorter version of it on at dumbasses.com. But she really believed in some of this stuff because she was scared. She was confused. It didn't make sense to her. Well, it was a good apology. And she did give the warning saying, hey, this is not a thing. You can't do this. You're basically, all the crap the Democrats talk about disenfranchising voters. This is exactly what it does. And that's exactly what she said it was doing. You're disenfranchising the voters of my district because you don't like me. All this stuff was true. Everything McCarthy said, everything that Greene said, all of it's true. Democrats didn't buy it. They voted her out of all committees all Democrats voted. 10 Republicans voted kick her out of the committees. This is not a good vote and should be ignored by all Republicans out of sheer ethics of this whole thing. The Democrats have no say as to who the Republicans put on committees. And the Republicans should have no say into who Democrats put in the committees. But because the Democrats did do this, this will happen again. And it will happen, I bet you, in 2022 when the Republicans take the House. So the Republicans would have never done this with Ilhan Omar. They would have never done this with Eric Swalwell. They would have never done this with Rashida Tlaib. They would have never done this with AOC. They would have never done this with Maxine Waters. Well, they are going to do it now. So we're going to have to see how that turns out. But right now, the Democrats have a whole new narrative that we're going to have to talk about. And we're going to have to talk about the genesis of that narrative, which is QAnon. The goal for Democrats for the last 20 years is to vilify Republicans. At first, this was done by questioning their policies and the ideas of the Republicans. Whether what they were doing would work, was moral or ethical. Later, Democrats would point out the Republicans were lying. Okay, this happened in about 2000 is when this started happening, when Bush got elected in 2000 over Al Gore, and when the war in Iraq occurred. This was proof that Republicans were lying. By the way, the Iraq war was proved to be legitimate. The United States did find terrorists in yellow cake or uranium, which you never hear reported, but it did happen. But as Democrats went more left, their claims about Republicans became more extreme. And with the help of the entertainment, news media, and the education system, people are beginning to believe some of the things that are being said by said. But I think it's still very few people. And in the future, this is probably going to backfire. People are going to get tired of this. Now, you might be asking, what does this have to do with Marjorie Taylor Greene? That's a good question. This is the first time an elected official, this is a first-time elected official to the House of Representatives. She's from a rural Texas district, probably won her elections by a few thousand votes. No one knows who she is. I don't even know what she looks like. Why is this a big deal? Because it is the new leftist narrative. You're hearing it on CNN. You're hearing it on MSNBC. The theories that Greene was embracing are the theories of QAnon. This is an alt-right radical conspiracy group. It is way out there, this stuff that they talk about. And I'm going to give you a bunch of the stuff they talk about. And when I say way out there, I mean freaking nuts. What the Democrats and the media are putting out there now is that Republicans are part of this conspiracy group. All Republicans, all conservatives. We are all nuts too. And we're dangerous. We're domestic terrorists. I had never heard of QAnon. I'm not much of a conspiracy guy. You'll find out why in a few minutes. I think John Wilkes Booth killed Lincoln because he hated Lincoln. I think FDR didn't know anything about the attack on Pearl Harbor. Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK because he was a communist, and JFK wasn't. We did land on the moon. Terrorists attacked the World Trade Center, and the world is round. I don't believe in any conspiracies and crap that is really thrown out there. If you're going to throw a conspiracy at me, that's great. You better have freaking evidence. You better have an argument. If you don't, I'm not going to listen to you. So, since my philosophies and beliefs, yours too, are being wrapped up into this QAnon thing, and maybe you are a QAnon guy. I don't know. You could be. I'm going to tell you, whoa, dude, relax, or give me a buzz and let's have a discussion about it if you are into this QAnon thing. But let's define what QAnon is. Because I didn't know what it is. President Trump didn't know what it was, right? President Trump didn't know what QAnon was. So let's talk about it. So, QAnon is what the media says all conservatives and Republicans believe in. So it makes sense that we sit back and we actually understand why they think we're all bad and evil and bigots and racists and xenophobes and whatever. So I decided to look this QAnon thing up. First things first, I do not have a ton of sources for this. I decided to stay away from the main groups that actually define QAnon, which are mostly left-wing in nature. That's CNN, MSNBC, The Guardian, The Daily Beast, Vox, sites like that. I decided to stay away from those. But I did go to Wikipedia. It just gave me definitions. It also kind of, you got to understand something about Wikipedia. They are leftist. I totally understand they're leftist. So you need to take everything I'm saying for a grain of salt. I'm pretty sure QAnon, well, we'll get into what I think QAnon is saying. But a lot of this stuff might not be correct, but I am going to go strictly off Wikipedia. I did read 3 or 4 sites. They really didn't give me a great definition, except they were alt-right domestic terrorists. But here's the definition. QAnon is an alt-right internet group that was started after the Trump election in 2017. Again, I'm not sure the starting date is correct. I think they might have been there before 2017. But this is what Wikipedia is saying. And Wikipedia is a left-wing website. They are primarily a conspiracy group that some classify as a cult. Yes. I think if this group can be classified as a group if they really believe in some of the things they believe in. So let's go over what they believe in. They believe the government is run by a satanic cabal. The government officials are part of a global pedophile ring that traffics in children throughout the world. President Trump was sent by God to destroy the cabal, and it would take 2 terms for him to do it. They said that the storm, quote, storm, would take place. This is when the government would arrest about thousands of QAnon people, thousands of them, and jail them in places like Guantanamo Bay. Trump was sent here by God to stop them. They believe that the Russia probe was a ruse started by Trump to enlist Robert Mueller to expose the sex trafficking and ring and prevent a coup to take over the government by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and George Soros. Got that? That's what they believe. And likewise, that's what you believe. That's what the media is telling you that you believe. This is why Democrats should totally ignore you, condemn you, cancel you, imprison you, and possibly kill you. This is the thing. Okay. This is the new media narrative. Don't believe me? Watch CNN or MSNBC. That's what they're saying. They say it almost all day. Don't think this is something we should take seriously because most normal people don't believe in this crap. I also didn't believe in the Russian hoax. I also don't believe in Jewish space lasers and that the government is run by a satanic cabal. If anything, I think they're run by a bunch of atheists. I think we should have heard about it before 2017. Even CNN might have reported that the government was run by a satanic cabal and was running a worldwide pedophile ring. I think that would have been reported. QAnon was first started. Let's continue on. QAnon was first started as a 4chan post. Now, if you don't know what 4chan is, not a shock. 4chan is an alt-right message board, much like Reddit. It's used primarily by far-right and white supremacists and weirdos like that. Anything on 4chan is usually pretty extreme. I don't want to get flagged by the United States government, so I don't typically go to 4chan, and I don't think there's a lot there that I'm really interested in reading about. The Q in QAnon, because it's spelled capital Q, capital A, N-O-N, lowercase n-o-n. The Q comes from the first person who posted on this 4chan site. Supposedly, he is a big deal because he has a Q-level security clearance with the government. Only those who have deal directly with the president and the president himself have a Q-level security clearance. So you can imagine this guy supposedly has a lot of knowledge. Now, I used to have a security clearance, and I've never heard of a Q-level security clearance. We already know that the president does have his own security clearance, but I don't think it's called Q level. But whatever, that we don't need to get facts in the way, and I don't think it really matters. The Anon part, so for Q, Anon, stands for anonymous. Okay, you got it? Q, Anon. The government did investigate this group, as they do all groups on 4chan. The QAnon account has had its posts stylistically analyzed, and it was found that at least 2 other people were working under the account. The FBI believes it is actually a group of people, so it's not one person making posts. That's a lot of people with Q-level security clearance. So, again, you might think it's bullshit. I'll even go a step further. I think it's probably more of a joke than anything else. Somebody's screwing with somebody else. That's all it really sounds like. The popularity, some of the things they come up with, which we're going to go into more. Some of the things this group comes up with are just way out there. The popularity of the group has led to other QAnon-type groups, including CIA Anon, FBI Anon, and a bunch of others. The group, though it's believed originated in the United States, is gaining some popularity in England, Germany, Australia, and Japan. So it is kind of expanding. In 2018, the group was listed by the FBI as a possible domestic terrorist organization. I'm sure they will be probably defined after the January 6th riot at the Capitol building. Trump, which is typical of Trump, has not helped himself with separating himself from this group. In 2018, members of QAnon actually began showing up to his Trump rallies. None of them were told they had to go away or they couldn't participate. Bill Mitchell, a QAnon member, showed up at the White House for the social media summit held by Trump. Again, this gives the summit a little less meaning, a little less impact. The QAnon motto, "Where we go one, we go all," which is kind of a crappy motto, was used at a Trump rally by a guy who was introducing Trump. In 2020, Trump did not reject the group during a press conference, though he did admit that he didn't know anything about him. And again, they support Trump, and Trump is not the kind of guy who's going to kick back support. So it's not a shock he did this. Trump is a hero of QAnon and is considered the Q+. Though that's not really Trump's fault, I thought I'd throw it out there because the media keeps bringing that whole thing up. So there are a bunch of other bizarre things that these guys believe, so let's go over them. They believe Kim Jong-un was a puppet leader of North Korea. He was assigned to be president of North Korea by the CIA. DNC leader Debbie Wasserman Schultz had an MS-13 gang member kill Seth Rich. I don't know if you remember that whole thing. Seth Rich kind of died under very suspicious circumstances, and the person that killed him never was brought to justice. Rich is a 27-year-old employee of the Democratic National Committee who is thought to have leaked DNC emails. So that's why it was considered very suspicious, especially to conservatives and Republicans. They believe that German Chancellor Angela Merkel is the granddaughter of Adolf Hitler. That's kind of cool. This is a really bizarre one here. This is a really bizarre one, and this is one I have heard more than once. The District Columbia Organic Act of 1871 made the United States run by corporations. QAnon believes on March 4, 2021, the law will be overturned and the country will revert back to how the Founding Fathers set up the country, which means Biden, who is technically being employed by the corporations, he wasn't voted in, he was employed by the corporations, will be removed from office. Of course, what's weird about this conspiracy theory is Donald Trump was president. So what you're saying is Donald Trump was also a member of that corporation. He was chosen by the corporation. So it's kind of weird right there. Donald Trump will then become president again, but this time as the 19th president. That's because it's presidents from the founder's country. Okay? And this one is weird. Again, I know people that believe in this crap. I swear to God, I can name them. After a little learning about QAnon, this is a dangerous group. They take their beliefs in an almost religious way, which is kind of weird. Politics is not religion. They are kooks, and they should be treated as kooks. They should also be seen as and treated as dangerous. It only takes one of these radicals who really believes this stuff to start taking pot shots at President Biden. I don't like President Biden, but I don't think the guy should be assassinated. I don't think it's good for the country. But so this is dangerous stuff. There has been a backlash against QAnon. Facebook and Twitter have suspended about as many QAnon accounts as they can kind of come up with. Media Matters, which is a far left-wing outlet and considered a fact checker, which is crap, says that Trump and his minions have been using dog whistles to QAnon, sending them secret messages. I don't put much value into this. Media Matters has called Ben Shapiro, who is an Orthodox Jew, a white supremacist. So to sit back and listen to Media Matters is not really a thing. But one of the things I do want to point out is extremism brings on extremism. And I think one of the reasons QAnon has become popular is because of the extremism that the left has gotten. And that extremism has birthed this extremist group. Now, I would not mind people going after QAnon too much if these same people went after Antifa and BLM. Because Antifa and BLM also extremist groups. I think QAnon is crazy. And crazy does become dangerous. But they have done no damage like that of BLM and Antifa. Even including in what they did on the January 6th riot at the Capitol building. And the January 6th riot was a QAnon riot. Okay? But BLM and Antifa have done billions of dollars in damage and have killed far more than 5 people. Understand this, and this is very important. I think QAnon is bad. But I also think Antifa and BLM are bad. All 3 groups should be condemned. The difference is 2 promulgate leftist ideas and the other does not. This is not whataboutism. That's what I'm trying to get at. This is me condemning all 3 groups. And this is what Republicans don't understand. They keep pointing out, if you sit there and say, well, yeah, they're bad, but, first off, whenever you say but, you ignore what happens to the left of but. But what about Antifa and BLM? Well, no, they're all bad. They're all bad. They all should be condemned. I am not saying QAnon should be allowed to go cruising around doing crazy things without being condemned. I'm saying they should be condemned. But I don't think Antifa and BLM should be going out and doing crazy things and spreading crazy... Well, spreading crazy information is a different story. That's free speech. They can do that. But they shouldn't be allowed to do crazy things without being condemned. And I think that's the problem conservatives are having with the left when it comes to their condemnation of QAnon. On the subject of conspiracy groups, conspiracies have been with us forever. There was a book I read once about conspiracies. I don't remember what it was called. I don't remember what it was about. The book's been around for a very long time. Usually it's because a conspiracy rises out of a tragedy. And the tragedy was so horrific that people can't really comprehend that tragedy could be caused by something so simple. How could let me give you the examples I already listed. How could the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor? Conspiracy. They couldn't. The United States must have known it was happening. The other one. How could a lone gunman kill the most powerful man in the free world, John F. Kennedy? Conspiracy. That lone gunman couldn't. The CIA, industrial military complex, the mob, and LBJ, or Lyndon B. Johnson, all conspired to kill JFK and bury the evidence. The moon is really far away, and my cell phone is stronger than the computers used in 1968. How could we have landed on the moon? Conspiracy. We didn't land on the moon. It was all staged in Burbank, California. Conspiracy. How can 19 terrorists hijack 4 jets with nothing more than box cutters and kill 3,000 Americans? Conspiracy. They can't. It was the U.S. government shooting missiles into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon in order to start the war in Iraq so that George W. Bush could clean up his father's mess. See how this works? There's only a couple problems with conspiracies. They require large numbers of people to keep quiet and not spill the beans. This is not a thing. Someone will always be a whistleblower. None of these conspiracies had a whistleblower. So if you take the moonshot, or let's just take the JFK thing, okay? You mean to tell me the military-industrial complex, the CIA, LBJ, the LBJ staff, the CIA, all of them, the mob, all of them, with all the people in those groups, were able to keep that a secret. The other problem, it ignores facts that are already there. For example, the conspiracy theory about the hijackers on 9/11. Wait a minute. You have the mastermind who did 9/11. You had the 19 terrorists who were training in the United States. You had Osama bin Laden admitting he did it. You have one of the terrorists who happened to be arrested before admit that he was supposed to be the 20th terrorist and now is serving the rest of his life in the Supermax in Florence, Colorado. You have to ignore all those facts. Or with JFK, you have to ignore the fact that, what's his name? Whoever killed Kennedy. You have to ignore the fact that he wasn't a bad shot. He was actually an expert shot in the Marines. And you have to ignore the fact that the government actually tested shooting that old Italian bolt-action rifle during a test, and all three shooters were able to make the shots. You have to ignore all of that stuff. Here's the thing with QAnon conspiracies, and I've actually gotten into it with people who believe this. When you point some of this stuff out, all they say is, nope, don't believe it. Nope, don't believe it. You're dumb. You're naive. You're listening to the... They never argue with you. They're kind of like leftists. They never argue with you. They never give you their proof. I know a guy who believes that we never landed on the moon, that all of this was done on a soundstage. And I sit there and I say, well, wait a minute. We actually have reflectors on the moon that measure the distance between the moon and the Earth. This is something every moon landing has done. No, that's not true. Wait a minute. We actually have moon rocks. And some of them have material that we do not have on the Earth. Nope, that's not it. Wait a minute. We could never make a soundstage the size that is needed to make the pictures and the films that are on the moon. Nope, that's not it. You can sit back and point out all sorts of evidence, and they don't want to hear it. And they'll just say, nope, it's not true. They won't give you any evidence. For example, the moon landing was the only evidence I'd ever gotten. Was that, well, when they're on the moon, you saw the pictures, you didn't see any stars, did you? Of course you didn't see any stars. You didn't see any stars because the moon's reflection from the sun was reflecting into the sky on the moon, and you couldn't see any stars because it was too bright. Just like you can't see any stars during the daytime on Earth. Nope, that's not true. So, I hope this makes you feel better. I hope you understand what you actually are. I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you're probably pretty conservative. So, I'm assuming that you are a QAnon nut job, just like me. So, good for us. Maybe we can sit there and make some sort of government conspiracy. Maybe we'll start coming up with something like that. Okay, you can download or listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, and YouTube. You can visit my website at www.dumbassestalkingpolitics.com. Parler is supposed to be online today, and if it does come online today, you can follow me on Parler at Dumbasses Talking Politics. We'll see if it comes up. Tomorrow, I got a phenomenal article that we're going to read about. Let's see if it is. Let's see if I'm not sure which one. I've got two of them actually. I'm going to read one tomorrow. I'm going to read one Thursday. This is Gene, and you've listened to Dumbasses Talking Politics.